Welcome.
Hey, what's going on?
Eric Bischoff, Bruce Prichard, same room. Sit down, guys. Welcome to the show. I want you guys to know, too. Did you see The Miz on the way out?
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
He was furious because this morning I got a text that he was in town. Can The Miz come on? But I was like, of course, Miz can come on anytime he wants. And I said, but I got Bruce and Bischoff coming in at 9:45. So it's going to have to be before 9:45. And he was very upset that he had to reschedule everything and go into his break time to make sure that you guys got your time as well.
I like it.
Prima donna.
Yeah. Well, welcome, guys. It's kind of amazing seeing you guys in the same room promoting the same project now, huh?
Yeah,
It's a little
not only our project, but then
the WWE's project.
What the hell's going on?
Well, did you realize? I mean, in 2018, so last night. So I was talking about it at the beginning of the show. Bruce Prichard has done things that I don't think anybody expected him to do, including yourself, Bruce. In the sense,
especially me.
Yeah, you've kind of turned podcasting, especially wrestling podcasting, upside down in the sense that you come out with this podcast where, you're a known guy. People know Brother Love. But in general, the name Bruce Prichard, like hardcore wrestling fans know who Bruce Prichard is, but you're not like a household name per se. And
Depends on which household.
well, yeah, I guess. In my household, you were known.
Well, see, there you go.
So household,
that
yeah.
counts.
But you come out with this podcast, and it's just Bruce Prichard telling his stories of 20 years of being right next to Vince McMahon, right? And going through shows and specific characters and all this stuff. And it catches fire to the extent that you're doing like hundreds of thousands of podcast downloads.
First of all, I lived through the time of being next to Vince McMahon for all those years.
Right.
And, yeah,
That's the biggest shocker.
And the fact that anyone cares to hear those stories is kind of amazing in and of itself as well.
Well, I think what's really amazing, and you guys are both in the same boat, is that you guys come from this time when wrestling was South Park, right? Like wrestling was the biggest thing in the world. So the stories that you have from that 5 years or something, all those people that were watching, even if they're not watching current day WWE necessarily, they still care about all those stories from when they were growing up.
My favorite thing is when people ask me, the first thing out of their mouth is, what happened when? And then they fill in the blank. But almost all of the conversations start off with, hey, what happened? What happened when? You remember that guy, the one with the black hair, and he was built really... I'm like, okay, you've described half the roster now, so let's get a little more specific.
But it's interesting now because... Bruce, you were one of Vince's right-hand men for like 20 years, right?
Right.
And a big part of that was the time when Eric Bischoff over here was running WCW in a specifically as competitive as anybody has ever run a company, going right after WWE to the point where you and Vince McMahon are writing TV, competing with what Eric is doing, and Eric is writing TV, competing with what you're doing, and it got to the point where you guys were after each other's throats, right? Or am I overstating?
I was after their audience. I didn't give a damn about their throats, but the audience was really important.
But you didn't. Did you just want the audience, or did you specifically want the audience to the point where like they were going to be out of business?
No, I think that's kind of a false narrative. That kind of exploded out of that era, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that Vince McMahon tried to convince everybody that big bad billionaire Ted was trying to put him out of business. He was trying to make himself the babyface. He was trying to galvanize the loyalty in his brand. He had been around for a long, long time. That really wasn't the case. There was no real, agenda to put anybody out of business, but there was a big agenda in terms of being number one and willing to do whatever it took to become number one.
So that story that's been told of you rallying your troops and saying, we're going to put WWE out of business, or WWF at the time, it's happening, we're putting them out of business. That's not something you did?
I probably did.
Uh-huh.
And I know that sounds like I'm contradicting myself, but there was a lot of things that I did and said back then to rally my troops as well, because you got to remember, from a talent's point of view, it was a very weird situation. I had a roster full of talent that I was asking to do things that they knew was going to probably burn a bridge.
Like what kind of stuff?
Oh, just anything that I could do to embarrass kind of put down the competition. You know, it was one thing for me to go out and give away finishes, and one thing for me to go out with holding a sign that says Vince McMahon fears ratings. That was me. I had no intention of ever needing to go back or going to WWE. The talent on the
We
other
didn't have
hand,
any intention of you coming to WWE either.
of course not. but the talent knew better. The talent knew that there was only really two places to work. They were either working for me or they were working for WWE, and they didn't want to do a lot of the stuff that I asked them to do that took it to the top.
Travis, we have another guest who's downstairs. Can you help get them up? Maybe I'll...
Yeah, just text me.
Yeah. Do you still have the producer's number that I texted you, Bruce? Can you text him the name that you want in the system? We'll put it in the system. We'll get him up. So you didn't... So that it was more creating this sort of... It was your bravado kind of trying to be infused into your talent.
It was a couple of things. It was galvanizing the troops, getting everybody to believe in the fact that we could be number one and stay number one. It was probably a little bit of my ego.
Sure.
No doubt about that. You know, I had one. I was still am a very competitive person, so I probably got caught up in a lot of my own BS in that regard. But I can assure you there was no real agenda about putting anybody out of business. I knew even back then, Sam, that the best environment we could be in was a competitive environment. Right. It was like the Coke and Pepsi wars, which is kind of what I modeled, you know, my approach to the business after.
Right. And I mean, it does make sense, and it's something people have talked about, that the best time for both companies has been when there's fierce competition. And Bruce, you, as somebody that was there before there was competition that was this bad, while and after, you think the best time was when there was really tough
without a doubt.
competition.
When there's somebody, look, you fight a lot harder when you're getting your ass kicked. And when Eric came in WCW, when they really got competitive and they came after us with a vengeance, and all of a sudden we weren't the only game in town. We were the ones now that were just fighting for that existence and fighting to be a part of everything. And they're doing great numbers, which made us do better numbers. The business got healthier as a whole, and I think that's what's missing today is some good, healthy competition.
But a lot of that's in hindsight. Like, while it's happening, do you think that, like, holy shit, we might be going out of business here?
There were times that we thought, oh, man, you know, could this be it? But at the same time, having been through similar situations, you always know that there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel if you keep working and you keep fighting for it. But there were definitely times when we thought, oh, man, we're going to shut the doors and this is all over.
Like when they were taking the water coolers out of the building and that kind of stuff?
No, it was more when we were flying down to buy WCW and purchase it, something like that we were thinking, oh man, this is the end.
You skipped about a year and a half there, but okay, whatever.
Did you have to take water coolers out of the? I mean, was there did financial times get very tough?
There were some expenses that were
See,
that
still
were
can't
cut,
deal with
okay?
it. Still can't deal
Hey,
with it.
I'm just saying we shaved expenses. We did what we had to do to survive, and then come back and conquer. That's what we ultimately did.
Was it tough to be financially disciplined? Because that's the other narrative, right? That you were not financially disciplined because you had Ted Turner's money, and that you could just, you know, again, the narrative is you could just offer big talent however much money in the world they wanted in these ridiculous deals that nobody could possibly maintain for any amount of time.
Yeah, it's all BS.
Right, okay.
It's not true at all.
So the thing that the one thing that I always think that Eric did was when people say that, basically what he did was create an atmosphere that had never been created for the wrestling business before, where all of a sudden the competition for contracts and the competition for their compensation, man, that changed everything. And it's changed even to this day, the way that we had done business in the past.
So did you have what were your feelings about Eric Bischoff?
Hated his guts.
You
didn't even
hated
know
him as a person.
Hated his guts, didn't even know him.
Right. And like, did you have... When you met him the first time, when did you meet him the first time?
The first day, the first time I met him is when he came in for an interview with us in
1991.
1991. And then
you did not get the gig.
I didn't get the gig.
No, but anyway. But the next time is when he came in the Meadowlands over in New Jersey.
When WCW goes out of business and Eric Bischoff becomes a character on WWE
Yeah,
TV.
Raw general manager.
So has by then, how many years removed from WCW was that moment?
I had really left WCW for all intents and purposes in '98. I came back for a short period of time for about 6 months or a year.
You're talking about 5
around
years.
2000. So I had been out of it. I think it was 2002 when I came
Yeah.
to WWE. So I had been out of the business, out of the public eye for about 2 years.
So is 2 years enough time for your feelings of hatred and animosity to kind of go away? Or when you see this guy, are you like, I don't know if we should be bringing this dude in?
No, actually, I was one of the people that wanted to bring him in.
Really?
And again, you have to understand that when I say I hated his guts, I hated losing.
Right.
Okay.
So once you're winning,
Yeah, once I'm winning, oh, hey, Eric, I'm sure he's a great guy. But again, you talk about people that you've never met before, that you've never been around, and you judge them based on the outside perception, which is not always fair. Once I met him, I fell in love with him, and he's one of my best friends today. But it was, not. I think if we had met in different circumstances, it might have been different. I don't know.
Like if we'd have met in a bar in 1998 down in Houston or something, it
do
would
you
have
think
been ugly.
you think it would have been a fight?
Yeah.
He's a karate man. I mean, I'm 3-time Hall of Fame, Black Belt Hall of Fame. Just saying.
I've heard that. Yeah. Do you think? Because there were. I mean, Eric, you kind of notoriously challenged Vince McMahon to a fight on your pay-per-view. Who do we have?
Oh my
JBL
gosh.
just walked in. There's a little.
This is how are you, Mr. Bischoff?
What a day.
Hello,
What's the
Mr. Layfield. Hey, John.
Glad you dressed up for this.
What's going on, JBL? Of
Hello,
course.
Sam.
How are you? Welcome.
Outstanding.
Yeah, welcome. Welcome to the show, man.
I just thought I'd crash the party.
I'm glad you
Two
did.
great gentlemen were here.
I'm glad
So I
you
thought
did.
I'd
We're
stop
here
by.
because we're at Barclays Center tonight for the Something to Wrestle With live right after
many
the
times has
Brooklyn
he
Nets.
pushed his show?
It's the
How many
first
times
time
has he
I'm
pushed
getting
his
it
show?
in. I took this opportunity to plug boxofgimmicks.com for tickets. Eric is going to be our special guest. We would love to have you join us as well in your fancy little outfit you got on today. You look good.
It's not a fancy little
Fancy
outfit.
little
It's not a
outfit.
fancy little outfit.
Sam, look at this outfit. Is this not just
I mean, he looks great, but he's a big man.
he is a big man, but
Bruce looks like the number 3 ball. Isn't the 3 ball that's red?
you look like Daddy Warbucks with that $18,000 custom coat you got on over your $10,000 suit and your what do you got on? What kind of boots you got on?
Alligator.
He's got alligator boots on. I got ostrich. Okay?
You do?
Yeah, mine are like 20 years old. He just killed that alligator the other day.
I got Jordans.
There you go.
There it is. So
It is the 3 ball, isn't it? That's red.
I think so.
Just checking.
So we were just round and red, though. That's the point, right?
Hey, we match.
We do. We were just talking about the rivalry that existed between these two, and obviously, I mean, JBL, you were like a soldier. I feel like in the wrestling wars for a long time. Like you've been a WWE loyalist.
Because Bischoff didn't want me.
For
No, that's not true. That's not true.
But like, so we were talking about the night that Eric Bischoff challenged Vince McMahon to a fight on his pay-per-view, which wasn't a wrestling match. It would have been a fight. It was the idea, I think.
There would have been no wrestling match. For
No,
sure.
no,
I promise you that.
I think we've pretty
Get
well.
us out of the corner now.
Who's leading? Like who's?
Get it again, kid.
I think we've established that should they have met at a bar, that Bruce may not have fared well against Eric because he's a karate
Who
man.
the hell said that?
Well, that's kind of what was.
I'm a 3-time Black Belt Hall of Fame.
The world knows it. It's okay.
It's because you donated a ton of money to the Hall of Fame. Did you? Would you stop with the freaking 3-time Hall of Fame? It's like you're Bruce Lee.
3 times. Close. I don't think he was inducted that many times.
JBL, did you ever have fantasies or thoughts of beating up Eric Bischoff during any of those days?
No, absolutely not. We had a very friendly rivalry. We did have the time when they invaded Norfolk, I guess it was. We were at right there close, and we invaded from Norfolk, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, went to the
that
scope,
night,
yeah.
we didn't know what would happen back because we had invaded in that afternoon, and
Right.
we were live, and people went around. Jerry Briscoe went around and told everybody to kind of wait out in the parking lot just because we didn't know what would happen.
Right, 'cause
So
you
you
don't
had
know
the
if they're
Harris
gonna-
boys out there. You had Ken Shamrock, which we were kind of hoping that Ken Shamrock would just was about all we needed, really.
Yeah. That was the night that, or the afternoon, WWE sends their guys over to where
We were hoping Ken Shamrock and Haku would get into a fight because it would probably still be going.
everybody could just watch.
That's right. But actually, stage guys were stationed all around the parking lot just to see because we had no idea what was going to happen.
All night.
It was a crazy time. Well, until the show was over and Vince and them actually left the arena because we didn't know if they'd come try to reciprocate in some way.
Did you know that there were people, Eric, stationed just in case you sent troops over?
No, I mean, I had no idea any of that was going on. And that's one of the things that I regret the most because had I known, I would have let them in. Had I known, whatever would have happened on television, and it would have been so much better.
Call the bluff.
Oh, called the bluff.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody that knows me, and if you just look back at the way I did things back then in terms of television, I think that would have been some of the greatest television in the history of wrestling.
So we're talking about when DX from the WWE went over to Nitro and was like outside in the parking lot and threatening to come in. They were driving a tank and they
had no plan.
No.
I mean, they had no
We
plan.
had a little bit of a plan.
You did not.
You were there, right?
Oh, yeah, I was there directing the whole thing. And,
I love
and
the
we
fact
were,
you had a dummy tape, though. A dummy tape that in case
We
your
did.
tape got kidnapped, you were going to sneak one
Yes.
out. That was something. You actually had a plan. But if you got in the building, though, say Eric would have let you in. If you got in the building, what would you have done?
Oh God, we just would have taped it and gone for it. We were kind of hoping. We were hoping for the bravado. We were hoping we were going to get in and get something.
But you know what?
we had-
I honestly, I don't think what you would have gotten would have been worth the effort.
probably- you're right.
Because the boys, there was no heat between
Yeah.
the boys.
Right.
No, there was
They
none.
would have broken in. They would have
No.
come in. They would have been all in character. And, doors would have been kicked down. And they would have got to the ring and have been high-fiving each other and, having a good time. And let's go crack a beer.
So-
it would have killed the whole thing, I think.
So when
I
you're-
agree completely.
So that's the way you felt about the WCW.
Oh, we had no
wrestlers.
we
You
had no
didn't-
animosity toward those guys.
Right.
They were trying to put us out of business and we were trying to stay alive. So there was the professional fight between us, but there was no animosity between us personally.
You were all part of the same fraternity.
Absolutely.
You were all.
Everybody's trying to make a living. The boys
Right.
are trying to make a living, and you don't want to put your buddy out of work. So
But it is interesting because before you came in, Eric was just saying that he did not want to put you guys out of business. That was something that that Vince McMahon.
That's why he
kind
flinched
of,
when I just said that. Because apparently I missed him saying that.
He said that was a narrative that kind of Vince McMahon was more pushing to get you guys all charged up.
Okay, well, whatever the nomenclature, whatever the narrative, it worked. We were
You were charged up.
We were scared to death.
Yeah.
I mean, during that time, we weren't selling any tickets right before that. Business was horrible. Business was horrible at WCW as well. Then all of a sudden, the NWO goes over there and sparks this incredible rise, and all of a sudden, business starts getting better, and we're getting beaten for the first time. And that was a scary thought. We knew that Ted Turner had deep pockets. We knew that we were a private company. We had to stay within budget. It was a scary fight that we had because it was not an asymmetrical fight at that point.
Right. All of a sudden, this thing. Well, and it had
Or
been.
it was an asymmetrical. I'm saying.
It had been off balance the other way before that, right? Like WCW wasn't looked at as real competition for WWF before any of this. It was just like that's just that stuff that's going on down south over there, and then all of a sudden it gets injected. And now it's like WCW is the one.
And honestly, not to jump in, John, but I can imagine being on the WWE side of the equation. They're competing against WCW, who was owned by Turner Broadcasting, who owned a plethora of networks, including TNT and TBS, that had unlimited funds. That was a tough animal to go head to head with, quite honestly, when you're not a public company at that time.
Right.
You don't own your own networks. Your programming is on the air at the behest of, network executives who can change their mind and their direction, at the spur of the moment. So it wasn't necessarily a fair situation either.
But that whole thing that was your advantage then is what ended up screwing up WCW
Ultimately.
completely because the company got even bigger. And when you're in that corporate structure, like you guys had the opportunity to kind of do whatever you want because it's your company.
that's true. And I think the other thing that people forget a lot of times is WCW for so many years had a history of having old wrestling promoters who were in charge of things. Very easy. You could tell what their game plan was. You kind of knew what it was. You figured it out ahead of time. Now all of a sudden you got this new young cocky kid who wants to be in the television business, and he's doing things that traditionally had never been done in our business before. So the rules of the game, which there are no rules to the game, were all of a sudden being changed, and we're going, oh, well, Dusty never would have done that. Bill Watts never would have done that. Jim
Right.
Ross never would have done that. Well, Eric Bischoff did it,
Yeah.
and it worked.
Which is interesting because when you look at how WWF was first on that rise, all the other promoters were saying
Right.
Vince McMahon's not playing by the rules. That's not what we do.
It is ironic, isn't
And
it?
you came
When
out and
go
did
back
this,
look
and,
at it.
and everybody who's like played by these new established rules, it's like, what's he doing? You can't do that stuff. You can't give away our results.
And Ted Turner was different then. I mean, Ted Turner, a little bit of luster has come off since he stepped down from CNN, but that time he was on top of the world. You know, he had the Braves. He had a new format with the Braves, with his TV network, where now he's not only, you know, it's the Yes Network now with the Yankees, but Ted Turner was the one who started all that. I mean, he was on top of the TV world at that time. It was a scary thing to be in a fight with Ted Turner.
He really was. He was an entrepreneur's entrepreneur, and probably the last of a dying breed in that respect, at least at his level. And he was willing to take amazing chances. He was a risk taker.
Yeah. Is it tough when you get to work with a guy like that? Because obviously you had admiration for him. Is it tough to then kind of try to figure out what the next thing is without? Because you're going to look at all people of that caliber as in you could be Ted Turner, right? And you're just not doing that.
It was
Is
tough.
that a difficult?
In fact, I never really did adjust. You know, the
Yeah.
corporate environment's never been one that I've been able to adjust to since that time for that very reason, because I loved working for someone that was a risk taker. He held you accountable. It wasn't, you know, as we talked about earlier, the narrative, just here's a bunch of money, kid, go do whatever you need to do. That wasn't the case at all. I had to live within guidelines and budgets and all the
And results,
same
right?
things everybody
You
else
need to have
did.
results.
And I was measured against those. And when I succeeded, I was given more rope and that kind of thing. But to be able to have the opportunity to work with a guy like Ted Turner, who was a visionary in every way. CNN is here. Cable news lives today as a result of Ted Turner's vision and execution.
Right.
That was an amazing time, and I miss it.
So, what were you going to say?
I think
John?
Eric's rise is one of the greatest TV stories in history.
Really is.
I mean, yeah, there's no doubt about it. He goes from this regional territory up in the old AWA to be running this company that was beating WWE soundly for almost 3 years.
Yeah.
Revenue jumps a significant multiple.
Which is, by the way, fairly unheard of, because you can talk about this like it's history, but even then, WWF is what it was then, and that was the name synonymous with pro wrestling. You didn't say pro wrestling, you said WWF. So the idea that WCW then could come and beat them in the ratings every week for years is as ludicrous as somebody doing it now. You know?
And no person does it single-handedly, but Eric deserves the majority of the credit for all of this. This was an incredible story in television that happened in an incredible time.
Do you think it gets enough credit for being a television story, not just a wrestling story? Because I really think
No, absolutely not.
It doesn't, does it?
Absolutely not. Can you imagine an upstart league coming along and unseating the NFL?
Yeah.
And beating them and almost putting them out of business?
For years.
For years.
Yeah.
It's absolutely unheard of.
Yeah,
And then a Shakespearean fall. You know,
Right.
which is it's an incredible story.
Right. Now, when it fell, Eric, when WCW fell, had you kind of washed your hands with it? So it was like, I'm not really upset about what's happened to this place? Or did it feel like your baby was kind of being pulled apart in front
It was
of you?
a little bit of both, and it didn't happen all at once. You know, it probably looked like it did in many respects to the audience, but in my world, it really started in August of '98 when the AOL Time Warner. When that really began to manifest and the changes that came along with it started really setting in, the handwriting was on the wall.
Boy, that merger worked out well, didn't it?
Yeah, it sure did. It sure did. But it was a painful period from like August of '98 until the time I was sent home in September of '99 was probably the worst year in my life, to be honest with you. And then when it finally, when WCW was purchased by WWE and it was official, one half of my brain was still very much, I felt like it was my baby, as you said. The other half of my brain was doing everything I could to try to just separate myself from it and move on with my life.
So, I mean, it got to just a crazy point. Like, we all can imagine that wrestlers were being traded back and forth and, he's popping up here, he's popping up there. But it got to the place where off-screen people, writers, were being traded back and forth and stuff like that was happening. Was there ever a moment where you were like, let's see if we can get Bruce from Vince?
No, that's another part of the narrative. There was never really anybody that we sat back in a dark room with a couple of six packs and said, okay, let's see if we can get this guy. Let's try to steal this guy. That never happened. When talent, whether it was writers or producers or whomever, came over to WCW, it was really them coming to us. It wasn't us trying to cherry pick talent. The only person that I kind of coveted, and I didn't even know him at the time, was Pat Patterson, because there were so many people that were working for me that had worked with Pat and obviously worked with Vince McMahon, that they just kept telling me what a great Finnish guy Pat Patterson was. And I had never worked with him, and I had never met him. But I knew, looking at our product and what was lacking in our product, that I needed somebody with that kind of depth of storytelling ability.
And that
The,
is
the
just
headline out of that is Eric Bischoff wanted Pat Patterson, did not want Bruce
I
Prichard.
got that 100%. I got that. He goes, yeah, Eric goes,
what the hell?
We didn't sit there picking like who we wanted,
That's right.
but we wanted Pat, not Bruce.
We didn't want Bruce. But that was we wanted Pat. Oh my God, we wanted Pat. Everybody wanted Pat. Nobody wanted Bruce.
But that was the only name that ever came up. And that was really because I didn't know Bruce.
Inside where it counts, it hurts, man. Just
I
saying.
didn't know what you did at that time. It didn't come up really.
Okay, and if now that you
can
know,
blame all the
would
boys
you-
that came
if you
over
could
and didn't talk about you.
If you could go back, hindsight being 2020, I would have been over Pat.
No, talk to Kevin Nash, talk to
Oh,
Scott Hall,
yeah,
talk to all
well.
those guys that came over. Never mention your name. It's their fault, not mine.
Wow. Never mention your name.
Wow, it just didn't
That's
come up.
unbelievable. They never even mentioned your name. All they did was talk about Pat.
How about Layfield? How about Layfield? Did they mention Layfield's name?
Actually, I tried to court him in an airport in Tokyo one time and make a deal with him, but it never happened.
Got me a raise. I ran into Eric in a bar in Narita Airport, and
Imagine that.
first time I
What
met
year
him.
is this?
More
or less.
right when the Attitude Era started.
98.
When Gold Dust first came out as Gold Dust, really
Okay.
doing the crazy stuff. I don't remember because I was on a 5-week tour for Bob at the point, but I had to fulfill an obligation to go back with Barry Windham and be part of the tag team tournament. And I run into Eric leaving the Japan, and it got back, and I was in the middle of a contract negotiation. Got me a huge raise, and Eric not once offered me a job, so it was terrific.
That's a
Did he
pretty
at least buy you a beer?
No, of course I bought everything. No, I don't. Actually, I don't remember. It was very nice. It was a great conversation. First time I ever met him. Very
That's a great
pleasant
timing for
individual.
that conversation to happen, though.
Somebody just happened to see it. They thought it was a clandestine meeting.
Yeah, we
and
went
just-
all. I went all the way to Tokyo to cut a deal with
That's right, to cut a
JBL.
deal with Bradshaw
'Cause we knew
Jack Bradshaw was so hot at that point.
We knew we couldn't meet in Des Moines, so we agreed to meet in Tokyo.
That's right.
Now, what from a talent perspective, what was your interactions with Bruce Prichard?
I love Pat.
You look. Pat was the guy.
Pat was great.
Wow.
So for those that
Yeah,
don't
hey,
know,
it's my show tonight over at Barclays Center, boxingimage.com.
Pat going to be there?
You better invite Pat.
Yeah, maybe I should have Pat there tonight.
for many years, Vince McMahon.
It's his birthday.
Historic today.
Pat's birthday today, 77 years old.
Historically, for many years, Vince McMahon had Bruce Prichard and Pat Patterson by his side, helping him with a lot of the creative.
but apparently you only
decisions,
wanted
but
Pat.
It was mainly Pat.
Mainly.
Bruce was just there for like comic relief, I guess.
No, I hired Bradshaw, so obviously it was comic relief.
What was your since he's here? Because I'm going to ask you about Eric too. But what was your favorite thing that you did with Bradshaw from a creative perspective?
We went to one time when we first started the JBL character and was working a program with Eddie Guerrero. So we went to Athens, Texas to shoot some vignettes of John catching some illegals, jumping over a fence. If we'd only had a wall, that would have been better. But then again, it would have been 2018 as well. But we did it in Athens where John is. And we get to this house that John has set up for us of this ranch land, and we have crew, and I got lighting people, and they're walking all around the house. The people aren't home yet, and they're shining lights in their house, looking around and starting to set up stuff. And a truck comes pulling down the driveway, long driveway, because it's in Athens, Texas, where Layfield's from. Nothing but rich people there. So as the truck comes down, we're like, hey, this must be them. And the guy stops. And we see him get out of his truck, go in the back of his truck, and look like he got a shotgun or something. Comes back in, and we're sitting there, hey, how you doing? And the guy comes out, and who are you? We were at the wrong house.
Oh boy,
That could have been
which
bad.
could have been really the
That could have
wrong
been
house.
bad.
Yeah, and exactly.
The guy
But
told
that
us he
was-
would have shot us if we
Yes.
hadn't waved to him.
Yeah.
Wow.
and he thought it was being robbed, and he thought he had pulled up on a bunch
We had
of
people
people.
with flashlights looking
Right.
in windows. I mean, it looked like we were
And
robbing
we're
the place.
unloading things, which looks like we're loading things
Sure.
to them. And but that was a lot of fun that night, just to have John chasing a family of immigrants back over get back over that damn fence there, boy.
Wasn't it amazing what you used to be able to get away with
Whoa.
in character? In character,
In character,
right?
yes.
We're and especially and I think it's kind of getting lost that there was a time when like a skit like that, right? You could show it with the explanation that this is a villainous character. So if you don't like what he's doing in terms of chasing illegals out of the country, if you don't like that, that's fine, because he's a villain. He's supposed to be doing bad things, right?
And you know what's really interesting even today? You know, wrestling has always fallen, as sports entertainment has always fallen into this kind of weird gray area category. Because in comedy, you could still do that today.
Sure.
In drama, you could still do that today, right?
Right.
In sports entertainment, you can't do that today because it's viewed in a different context by the audience.
Do you think it has to be viewed by that context, or if you were running a promotion or something, would you try to focus more on the fact that these are people portraying characters? Here's the credits at the end. Here's this guy's real name.
The latter. Because otherwise you become much more confined in terms of your ability to tell a story and to solicit comedy and to get comedy. You know, you have to be a little outrageous. You have to do outrageous things. But when you're viewed in this weird kind of gray area context, it makes it very, very difficult.
What do you think of that, JBL?
I think I completely agree. I think it's insane. I mean, you had Carol on Walking Dead basically exterminate some teenager one day, a young girl. You know, and people didn't outrage. That's too far. You know, fans chanting that's too far. You know, and now you have fans chanting that's too far. Really?
Yeah, for what?
Yeah, and I've never understood heel sections. You know, if a heel has a heel section, he's not doing his job. He or she, he's not doing his job. And if people are comfortable with the heel heat, it's not good heat.
Right.
Exactly.
You know, and why is sports entertainment held to a different standard than Walking Dead or Game of Thrones or any other show?
Like in 2018, there should be Twitter outrage over a bad guy wrestler, because that's how people express not liking something, right?
You don't like a character. You say, hey, I don't like the attributes of this character.
Right.
Or I really love the attributes of this character.
Yeah.
That's what it's for.
It's interesting, though. I mean, people don't like that. But I think...
Let me give you a great example.
Yeah,
Years ago, first time I'd seen what that now is called the smart mark. I don't even know what they still have that term now, but I'd never met somebody who had written for one of the dirt sheets back in the early 90s. And he told me, I just think that work rate of Killer Tim Brooks is terrible. First time I'd heard that term, work rate.
By the way, so the first time you hear the term work rate is by one of the wrestling gossip people that are trying to use wrestling lingo.
That's right.
Thinking that, like, hey,
that's right. Yeah, try to use the lingo, which just never works. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, he just can't work. It's just terrible.
Killer Tim Brooks can't work.
And I said, well, let me ask you a question. If they brought in Stan Hansen to beat up Killer Tim Brooks, would you pay? He goes, I'd pay double. I go, you're right. He's not a worker. That's what you want. You want people to hate the guy.
That's the whole
and Killer
thing,
sold
isn't it?
tickets. I thought Killer was a great worker, but that to me sums up some of what you see with the hardcore base.
That's probably why you get along with Eric and actually with Bruce too. And the way
We
really
don't
surprising.
we don't get along other than our share of love for donkeys.
We love donkeys.
why he portrayed.
Let's let that one go.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to. I'm not. No follow-ups. No follow-ups.
It's just a thing.
No,
Well,
you know what? It's 2018.
Okay,
I'm
yeah.
totally, whatever you want to be. But none of you guys have ever had a problem with heat. None of you guys have ever had a problem being the villain. None of you guys have ever. In fact, if you feel, I think all three of you, if you feel like you're starting to get cool or you're starting to get cheered, you'd go and do something that pisses people off more.
Absolutely.
I walked out one day and I saw a JBL shirt, and I called Vince right away and I said, "Why are you selling my shirts?" Because I had no idea we were, and I said, "This kills me. Why would you want a heel to sell a shirt?"
Right.
And he said, "You're right. They took it off the shelf right away."
Well, but that person didn't buy one. They had spilled something on it. We gave them one of those shirts because we had
I
so
didn't say
many.
you sold it.
Okay.
But last thing you want is somebody in the stands to be wearing some of your merchandise, saying, "Oh, this guy is cool," and the person next to him wanting to boo. You got to embrace that heat, and there aren't many people that do. A guy like Randy Orton does. He certainly loves it. A guy like Miz does. I mean, there are a few.
Jericho does. Yeah.
Jericho does a terrific heel.
That's a small handful.
But it's an incredibly small handful, and it's always been a small handful.
Yeah, and I think it's getting smaller now because it's not just dealing with the crowds. It's dealing with social media. It follows you now. So you have to be comfortable with people who don't separate the person and the character following you and being like, you suck, you suck, you suck.
Remember when we had the Un-Americans and they quit because they were getting too much heat? Real heat?
Didn't want heat.
Somebody called them a bad name in the airport, and they said, "We can't take this." And
I live in Tampa. I'm not an Un-American. I'm like, oh, my God. They hate you. I know. They hate us. I can't take it. So it's
What are we doing here then?
okay.
Bruce, this is probably pretty obscure for you, but for us, like, we all remember. Do you remember when a comedian named Patrice O'Neill wrote for you guys? I think he lasted maybe 3 days. He said Stephanie fired him 4 or 5 times because he didn't have a conversation about it. She goes, "No, you're fired." And he goes, "All right. I'm firing you right now." Yeah, I heard you.
I remember Patrice.
Do you
very
remember
well.
Patrice?
Yeah, I sure do.
He was he ended up he was a huge wrestling fan.
Yep.
But
Hilarious.
I mean, probably he could go down as one of the great stand-ups of all time.
Right.
And,
I would agree with that.
And since he's passed away, I think that's only gone up for
and
him.
here's my Patrice story was in the very short time that he was with the company.
Because he ended up leaving because he goes, I got stand-up gigs this weekend because I'm not going to leave stand-up. And when he got signed, it was like, yeah, that's fine. Keep doing your stand-up thing. And they go, hey, we need you Saturday. And he's like, well, I got a stand-up gig. And they're like, well, we need you. And he's like, well, I got a stand-up gig. And that was it.
And then he went to do Sunday Night Heat at the World or the WWF New York, and the entire time was playing video games. the entire time he was supposed to be there, help produce things, and he's just sitting in the corner playing video games. And they're like, "Where is Patrice?" And he was nowhere to be found. And then they go back in the little arcade thing there, and he's going on. And same thing. It's like, I can't be bothered now, man. I got the high score going. I'm gonna get this. And that was kind of that was the end.
That's exactly Patrice, though.
Yeah,
I mean that's exactly what he would have done in that scenario. Yeah, I'm just curious. So I'm bummed out that Jim isn't here. He's in St. Louis this weekend, but that's because Norton performed stand-up on the boat at Shane McMahon's bachelor party.
Well, that had to have been fun.
Did you go to that?
I did not.
Oh, I did.
You were there, Bruce.
I was
That
there.
tells you something about his state of mind that he doesn't remember if I was there or not. Must have been a good party.
It was a hell of a party. It was a hell of a party. It was plugged and promo to be a hell of a party. So much so that we all had car services from our home, and we all took a bus to the boat. And nobody was allowed to drive and just show up. You had to be on the bus. You had to have a car service.
So a lot of times when parties get hyped up like that, it ends up, nothing can live up to the hype. This wasn't one of those.
This was a lot of fun.
This lived up to the hype. Yeah.
This was a lot of fun, man. This was a good time.
Do you have any recollection of the stand-up comedy that evening?
I don't remember.
You didn't remember
Okay,
JBL
I don't
was
remember
there,
the stand-up comedy. I remember the other entertainment that
Right.
we had on the boat, which was a lot of fun.
Right.
Which was?
I don't know. They brought out those donkeys that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, I was going around looking for a donkey. I said, Jake, there was no donkey, so I was looking for JBL because I figured he would know.
So we talked about what your favorite thing with JBL is. Somebody tweeted me this actually last night, and they said if you got Bruce and Eric in the same room, please ask them about the night on SmackDown when Eric Bischoff passionately made out with Stephanie McMahon. And then it just kind of was just that. Like, it was just that one moment, and then that was the end of it. Did you produce that?
I did.
What happened there?
I pretty much just what you saw.
But if you're okay,
here's the weird thing to it, and I'll never forget Brian Gewirtz because Eric was wearing a Vince McMahon mask.
Right.
Prior to that, it was a Halloween episode, and Brian kept going. He goes, is it not funny to anybody else that technically she's making out with her dad?
While her dad is standing 4 feet away, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, Vince was in the room, yeah.
So what is that for you, Eric? Is it when you first get tasked with this, when you find out tonight on the show you're going to make out with Stephanie, what's the first thought?
It was a rib.
You didn't think it was going to happen?
I didn't think it was real.
Did you get along with Stephanie?
Professionally, yeah, not personally. I mean, not that we didn't get along personally, but I didn't interact with her on a personal level. Professionally, we got along fine.
So, at what point do you find out that it's real life? This is happening.
When Bruce started walking me through it, we started setting it up and staging it, and finding our
marks.
marks.
He's still looking at me like we're gonna really kiss.
And Vince is standing there, directing, watching this whole thing, and I'm just thinking, wow, this is bizarre.
How does Vince direct you?
Get in there, pal! Get into those puppies! Look at them! Embrace it! And when you get those lips lock, I want to see.
Can I be edited out of this segment?
Wow, that makes me want to do it again.
Look,
I
I'm
missed
not
out.
here.
Do it like you did, Linda. He gets Linda
No,
too.
Linda was afterwards.
I forgot about that.
Like
yeah.
you're gonna do Linda then.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't be here either. The point of this story is that Vince is a great leader and a motivator.
Yes,
That's what I'm trying to get across.
yes.
That's all I'm trying to get across. But was it an awkward scenario for you, or once you're doing something in that world, it's just whatever, we're doing it?
You know, I went to WWE knowing that I was going to be put in situations that were awkward and uncomfortable because that's the nature. You know, if you look at Vince McMahon and some of the things, awkward situations he's put himself in,
Yeah.
or he's put his daughter in, or he's put other people in. I knew when I stepped into that environment, I was going to be put into situations like that. Once I knew that it was real and it wasn't a rib, to me, it was just another scene. I didn't really think about it too much.
You know, the best thing on Vince was when he was with Stone Cold Steve Austin. You talk about Vince putting himself in embarrassing
Right.
situations where he used the bathroom on himself in the ring. And as soon as he did, Ron Simmons turned to me and goes, "Now, what are you going to say no to?" Because if Vince is willing to do that,
That's it.
you know, to put over Steve and
Yeah.
to be, you know, the ultimate bad guy coward.
Yeah.
You know, what are you going to say no to?
Which at that point, does it feel good as a talent to know, like, you know what, the boss is in this with us, like we're all doing this.
It's a work.
Yeah,
And he
it's a
wouldn't
work.
ask
Yeah.
anybody
Some
to
people-
do something he wouldn't do.
That's right.
yeah. Now, JBL, do you think you've made more money in wrestling or finance?
Long-term finance, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no
What-
doubt about it.
What do you think of Bitcoin?
It's a bubble. Like I think it's a modern day tulip mania. But
That's what my dad said.
there's underlying value in tulips. They were back in the 1600s, but it was a bubble. I think it's a bubble now. I don't know where the underlying value is, but cryptocurrencies are going to take over. Governments hate them, so it's going to be hard for these cryptocurrencies to take over. I would not buy it because governments are going to try to suppress it because
I see.
they can't control it.
Right.
So most fiat currencies, no matter what it is, start from the top down, from governments coming down. This is going to have to start from the bottom up, from retail stores going up. So it's going to be a harder implementation. But I think
What? I just tapped Eric Bischoff and I look at him. I go, I feel so stupid right now. we're all sitting here hanging on every word. Going,
No, he had me at hello when he started going off on
Keep going, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was whispering. That's,
You got any Bitcoin, Bruce?
no,
Okay.
no,
does your show not take Bitcoin? You can go back to plug in your show again.
no. That's at boxofgimmicks.com. You can get tickets tonight
They
for
don't take
Barclays.
Bitcoin.
They don't take Bitcoin.
What do they take?
They take American Express, MasterCard, Visa, Diners Club. You name it.
PayPal?
I'll take cash.
JBL, can you believe that Bruce Prichard is hosting a podcast?
Absolutely. One
That
of the
is-
most entertaining guys I've ever known.
But
But
that's-
he and Eric both. I think they're both two of the best guys I've ever known and two of the most entertaining guys I've ever known and two of the most successful.
But it's
Absolutely.
become so big.
Absolutely.
It's doing a live show at the Barclays Center. They don't do podcasts
Bruce
there.
has always been entertaining. He's
Yeah.
just being Bruce. And there's a reason he has a huge following. I think he's fantastic, and I think most people that listen to him think the same thing.
Yeah.
Think the same thing about Eric.
Yeah. So we weren't done with the cryptocurrency thing. I think you just
Yeah, I'm
you just
sorry.
went over. So you think that it's one of those things where hypothetically you could see the logic in why cryptocurrency would be a good thing, but governments will simply not
Governments
allow it.
are going to try to suppress it. Look, the big thing on Bitcoin initially was the Chinese money that was stepping into it because that way they can get money out of China without the currency restrictions or paying any type of fees. And then it became a speculative bubble, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But just because it's a bubble does not mean there's not underlying value. There is underlying value.
You just have to figure out what that
Just
line
got to
is.
figure out where it is. I don't think it's $10,000, but I don't know where it is. I don't know if that's 100. I don't know if that's 8,000. I don't know where it is.
Right. When did you get into finance?
In the '97 Asian crisis, I started buying some stocks when I first had some money, thanks to Eric getting me a new contract. Bought Applied Materials and I think Oracle. I think it was the first couple stocks I bought, and they did really well, like everything did in the late '90s.
And you
so I got
started
into stocks.
studying and studying and studying?
Started studying. Yeah, I wrote a financial book. Then after. Say 2004, I wanted to build a wind farm in West Texas, where I'm from. It's the wind capital of the world. Worked with an investment bank. The renewable energy credit market imploded, so it killed the margins on the deal. But the investment bank liked what I did, and they asked me to come work for them. So I worked for an investment bank for about 3 years on Wall Street.
Wow. Now, a wind farm is one of those deals where they have all of the
big
windmills
turbines.
and stuff.
Yeah,
And that's
where I grew up in Sweetwater,
for farming
Texas. Nolan
energy.
County is the wind capital of the world.
Man. Now, did you ever, when you're a performer and people know you as one thing, right? They know you as JBL or Bradshaw from the Acolytes, whatever. They know you as the wrestler that you're portraying. Do you want to kind of get out in front of everybody and say, hey, I also know all this stuff. I'm not just
No,
this. You don't
goodness,
care.
No, that like I don't know if that's lack of ego or just a lack of intelligence on my part, but it's no. Look, I loved what I did. I loved the characters I portrayed. I loved the business I was in and still in, and so I enjoy it. If they know that I do other stuff, that's great. If they don't, that's fine as well. I'd rather people know about my charity work. I started up my own charity in Bermuda, and I work with a lot of at-risk kids. I've been to India, to the slums of Mumbai just a couple months ago. I'm going to Haiti coming up. I'm going to Venezuela to work with a jail ministry with at-risk kids and how to work with education. I'm working with Play Rugby USA here in New York, 5,500 kids. They've taken graduation rates from in some schools that are 50% to 100%, with 100% going to college. I'd rather people talk about that than anything I do. The other stuff is just fluff.
So the Roastmaster General, Jeff Ross, just walked in. Let me explain what you walked into.
Oh, I know JBL. Hi.
Okay.
Hi, guys.
So JBL, you know,
Yeah.
from WWE.
Of course.
This is Eric Bischoff, who
course.
ran WCW for a long time, then he worked at WWE for a long time. And this is Bruce Prichard, who has the hottest wrestling podcast. Honestly, it's become one of the hottest podcasts online. And he was one of Vince McMahon's right-hand men for like 20 years. So now he goes on his podcast and he tells
Brother Love.
And
who
Brother
gets to
Love.
return that guy,
Well, hi, guys. Welcome to the Jim and Sam Raw show. I did a bit yesterday. It's going to come out, I think, on probably tomorrow for the 25th Raw anniversary.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. I'm going to roast my favorite heels of all time.
Oh, are you
Or current heels.
are you a fan or did you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
It's going to be fun.
that's great.
I'll tip one of the jokes.
Yeah.
JBL, on your retirement, congratulations. My favorite thing you ever announced was your retirement.
Thank you very much. I'm glad I made you happy. I've got one fan.
That's a pretty good one.
I'm glad that my quitting made you happy.
Does it?
Welcome to New York, you guys.
Does it bother you that the shot gets taken at the end? Would you rather have the shot taken at your announcing or your wrestling?
Look,
Doesn't matter.
Wait, you wrestled?
not well. You're on the internet, aren't you?
Yeah. No, it's good to see you guys. Yeah, it's gonna be fun. Big
Yeah.
Raw Monday night. I mean, it's huge. Everybody's in town. This is so cool.
Yeah. Well, you got a Caroline show.
Yeah.
All weekend, right?
No, I'm here. I'm there February 8th through 12th.
Oh, February. So what are you doing here this weekend?
I'm not. I'm leaving this weekend for. I'm gonna pop up at the Comedy Cellar this weekend, but I'm in
okay.
Europe all week with Chris Rock.
That's not a bad gig.
I'm a surprise guest, which I think I just ruined at his O2 gigs and his Wembley gigs in London all week.
Well, our European listener base is going to be like,
What's
what the
up,
fuck?
England, Glasgow, and Nottingham, and a bunch of places in England this week, and then I come back to my home club, Caroline's, the whole
February 8th.
February 8th, 9, 10, 11, something like that.
For the weekend of February 8th is when Jeff Ross is going to be at Caroline's, which is good because then you don't have to compete with Bruce Prichard at the Barclays Center
Well,
tonight
if you
doing his
want to come
podcast.
tonight, yeah.
You're doing your podcast at the Barclays
at
Center?
Barclays Center.
Isn't that
tonight,
amazing?
yeah.
Where do you get tickets, Bruce?
At boxofgimmicks.com.
You're doing your podcast in a 20,000 seat venue?
Yeah, right after the basketball game. You got the basketball game and then us right afterwards.
That's
It's
amazing.
It's a doubleheader. So
Wow.
And that's tonight, Bruce, in the Barclays Center?
that is tonight at Barclays Center. Boxofgimmicks.com is the place to get your tickets.
That's in Brooklyn, New York, isn't it?
It is in Brooklyn, New York. As a matter of fact, Eric Bischoff is going to be our special guest.
Wow.
We'd
And
love to
maybe-
have Jeff come join us and JBL. You know, I mean,
And we've got an NBA game as a warm-up act.
yeah,
That's right.
You guys are
Sam-
dressed.
Sam
You guys
has
are
been
dressed
great.
for a podcast.
exactly. I always dress for a podcast.
You ever play billiards?
Once in a
The
while.
number 3 ball?
Yeah.
It's my favorite.
That's what he's dressed as today.
That's what he's dressed as.
Yeah,
it looks
that's
good.
me.
Sam, it's been great joining you. I got to run. I've bought into a pro rugby team here in New York City. In fact, our game is March 24th. I hate to promote something like Bruce is doing.
No,
man.
please do. So you bought into. What do you think? What do you think rugby's got to do to break through here in the States in a real way?
I think rugby in the United States is the greatest growth opportunity in the globe. The World Cup in 2015 was the third most watched sporting event of all time, more than the Super Bowl. So I think rugby is going to happen in the United States. Now, whether we do it or not, I'm not sure. Hopefully, we are the ones that do it. But we've got the hottest market in New York, and we've got a team here in the new league that kicks up. CBS Sports is carrying our game of the week.
I'll tell you, if JBL is wrong about the things he's invested in, He makes you believe he's right for sure. He's good.
It's just my opinion.
How rich is this guy?
Stop it!
What?
Stop it! You're the one that's in the Barclays Center, 20,000 seats for a podcast.
You fly in from Bermuda to have your toes done.
I don't have my toes done.
Do you ever have a
John.
pedicure?
Oh yeah, I do have my toes done. Not on my fingers done. Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
He gets confused. I
Wow.
don't have my
And
toes done.
are you going to be?
I've only been just a couple generations away from all four. So
Are you making your big? Are you going to be at Raw 25?
I am going to be.
Oh
at
yes,
25.
yes, they announced you
They
with
announced me, yes.
with Ron Simmons. Yeah,
Yes.
and that'll be. Is that your first show back since you've stepped away?
No, I did Tribute to the Troops.
Tribute to the Troops, of
Yeah.
course. But it's your first traditional arena
Yes,
Monday Night Raw show.
That one looked fun. That tribute.
it was awesome.
That was cool.
Well, I think it's to me, it's the greatest thing that WWE does every year is a tribute. To the
Did they shoot your cowboy hat off?
Can you or can they?
Did they?
No, they didn't. I pretty much just put it on the desk. I hadn't worn it actually in years. Nobody knows that, so don't tell anybody.
It's just a prop at this point. Well, thank you for
Thank
stopping
you,
by,
guys.
JBL. I appreciate it, man. You've done a lot of stuff for Troop.
Great
right?
to see you, man.
Oh yeah, man. Love doing troop shows. Best audience there is.
Why is that? Just because they don't?
They don't drink. They want to see the show.
Yeah.
They're starved for entertainment, and they're more diverse and sophisticated than most audiences. I mean, they're scientists. You know, the military is all kinds of people.
Yeah.
Great
Now,
crowds.
do the troops come? And because there are people who get sensitive about the insult brand of humor. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like they never know, especially like you could almost see with JBL. Like when you were firing shots at him, I was like, okay. Is he gonna realize is he gonna realize this is comedy, or is he gonna be like, "Who the fuck is this?"
He
guy?
knows where he is.
Yeah,
he's,
I know.
he's fine.
He
He's
does.
fine.
But I'm sure you run into that a lot.
Well, I only roast people who look like they're game. You know, who look they're up for it.
But you've been wrong?
Every now and then somebody gets mad, but not too bad.
That's well
Bischoff looks fine with it. Look at him.
I'm used to it, brother.
at
Yeah.
this point. Yeah, you.
Thick skin, very thick skin.
How long did it take? So like you're not. Well, I guess you were always a TV guy, but when you hit that high profile, that's when you got people really criticizing you, and the audience becomes aware that you're running the company. So anything going wrong with the company, you're going to get criticized for. Anything they don't like you on TV, you're going to get criticized for. At what point did you develop a thick skin?
Really, when I started out,
From the beginning.
I came into the industry with a lot of heat. Part of it was because no one thought I deserved to be in the fraternity. I didn't pay my dues. I wasn't a wrestler. I didn't come up in a wrestling family. All the things that were kind of prerequisites before I broke into the business. And I kind of looked like a Ken doll weatherman. So just the way I looked kind of pissed people off.
Who got punched in the face 300 times?
A lot. So I was used to the heat, but it certainly escalated as time went on. And I was in this weird spot. We talked about it earlier about heat and getting used to heat and wanting heat. I loved it because I knew as long as the audience loved me, my checks would keep getting bigger. Or excuse me, as long as they hated me,
They'd get bigger.
They'd keep getting bigger. As
Yeah.
soon as they started liking me, I was in trouble.
Right. Now, how are you when you're not doing well on stage? Because I know Norton loves on some level when
Yeah.
he starts bombing,
Yeah.
just because, you've been doing it for so long, he's like, I'm going to enjoy this and I'm going to make the audience pay for this a little bit.
I don't know.
Or do you get awkward?
I think if people come to a Jeff Ross show, they're expecting to get made fun of. They're expecting me to rip in, and if it's my show, like at Caroline's, it's my crowd coming to see me. It's gonna be foolproof. I don't feel like it'll be bad. The only thing that could go wrong is if someone's drunk or heckling.
Right.
But
But you don't get people that because I feel like because you have this thing that you do, and people think that they can do it too. Like people think that the stuff we do on the radio, like if Norton and me are insulting each other,
Right.
we're gonna get that from people on Twitter because they're like, "Hey, we're all doing it," and I get it, but it's like it's not the same. So
It's only bad when it's not on stage, when it's not in the club. Like if I walk into the airport and it's like, Jeff, you fat fuck. And I'm like, spare me the roasting at 7 a.m.
Right, I
on
don't-
the Southwest flight.
I don't need that right now.
Yeah.
But you don't mind when
roasting's controlled. You have to do it in the right context.
and if people figured out that this is the thing that you do, it's not like you come to a roast so we can all make fun of each other. Like some of you guys are the audience.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And then, in a weird way, when I roast somebody, like if I'm roasting Justin Bieber, I'm doing it vicariously for, the entire world. So in a weird way, they want me to sort of have free reign.
Right.
They
Right.
don't get in my way. If anything, if a word leaks out that I'm roasting somebody, everyone I come in contact with, even like cab drivers and people on the street, will start giving me material on that person. They'll be like,
Really?
say this about Bieber, whatever.
Do you ever use it?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Well, sometimes
That's great.
It's good for ideas.
Yeah.
I'm not saying anybody is a good joke writer randomly on the street,
But it'll start you in the direction.
Yeah.
Were you there for the Hugh Hefner roast?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I produced that one.
Right. So I was the reason it was just in my head was because I just watched the Gilbert Gottfried documentary.
It's great, Gilbert.
Is Gilbert's joke his 9/11 joke?
Yeah.
Now that some time has passed, I think we can all recognize it as one of these great roast jokes.
Yeah.
Like it's just an incredible joke. But in that moment, like it just fell completely flat. As a do you like seeing a guy like Gilbert? Because you know that the joke is good. So it's not like this is a reflection on Gilbert. Do you like that uncomfortable moment? Or do you sit there like, oh, somebody save Gilbert?
It was a night. I mean, it was a month of uncomfortableness. You know, it was post 9/11 in New York, and we were honoring Hugh Hefner, who's like the reason the terrorists hate us.
Right.
And that was before that was.
He really is the symbol of
American freedom and liberty and sexuality, freedom and I remember writing a letter like the few days after 9/11 because we had to decide whether the show was going to go on or not because we had a hotel booked and TV trucks and it was a big commitment.
Yeah.
And my position was, and I made this known to Hef and the Comedy Central and to the Friars Club, that if we don't go on with the show, that literally is the terrorists winning. And that wasn't cliche back then. It had just happened, 9/11.
Yeah.
And New Yorkers were still sort of covering their mouths and trying to breathe. And I was like, it's 3 weeks away. And I actually think we should just cancel the after party, give the money to the Twin Towers Fund, and do this show.
Yeah.
And the roast must go on. And there were a lot of uncomfortable moments. I think the first one was Rob Schneider was doing well, and he hit a few wrong notes, and I ran up to him, and I put my arm around him, and I said, Rob, hasn't there been enough bombing in this city? And I think it opened it up just enough where Jimmy Kimmel was hosting, and he actually set the tone really well right at the top. And by the time Gilbert got on, nobody had really gone for a to-the-gut
9/11 planes into buildings joke.
Well, tell them the joke. I don't know if everybody knows this.
So the joke
it's very
is
end of the roast.
Gilbert goes up and he said, and I'm probably going to butcher it, so forgive me, but he goes, they're in New York, and he's like, I've been trying to catch, and he's obviously shouting it because he's Gilbert Gottfried, so it's just like, if it's a gut punch, it's a gut punch. He goes, I'm in New York, and I keep trying to get a direct flight out of here, but I can't get a flight without a layover in the Empire State Building.
Oh, God.
Wow. And this is a month after 9/11.
Yeah.
So the room just died.
Someone yelled too soon. It was like the first time you really heard it, too soon.
And that's when Gilbert said, okay, and he took a second to collect himself, and then he did a version of the Aristocrats joke, which is the filthiest, pedophile, incest, okay, well, if that's too much, let me give you every taboo thing in one joke, and that's where we'll leave it. And by the end of the horrible, Aristocrats joke, the crowd was right back with him. He got them all back. It was amazing.
Wow.
It was really amazing.
He is a force to be reckoned with, Gilbert.
Yeah. Do you think is he one of the best in a situation like that?
Well, he's the most entertaining.
Yeah.
If I was running a diabetes charity, he might not be the first guy I want to call. But if I'm trying to break through people's tension and pain during a national crisis, I think Gilbert is the right medicine.
He's the guy to call.
Yeah. I mean, that's what comedy is more than ever right now, right? Like, you notice, all the comedy clubs are packed. All our friends are doing so well because, I don't know, people are, in uncertain times, they look to the comedians to tell the truth, to make them feel better.
And to be an escape, right?
And to be an escape from your normal shitty life.
Which should be, it's the same role wrestling plays, isn't it?
We try to.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, we try to.
Although
we just
sometimes
wanna laugh.
You guys just throw so much shit at the wall that you're like, why the fuck would you do that? And you're like, yeah, we probably shouldn't have done that.
This guy looks like he's wrestling with his sexuality.
A little bit, It depends on the time of day, pretty much.
By the way, I'll tell you something else about Bruce Prichard that we're about to run out of time, but I should have mentioned it. First of all, of course, he'll be at the Barclays tonight. At boxofgimmicks.com is where you get tickets, and Eric Bischoff will be with him. Jeff Ross is going to be at Caroline's weekend of February 8th. But P. Diddy stole his name, Brother Love, and this podcast has gotten so big that P. Diddy got inundated with tweets and comments and all this stuff.
You kind of curb stomp P. Diddy, didn't
Yeah.
you?
Pretty much.
Put an end to that.
How
Yeah.
good does that feel? You
Oh.
beat P. Diddy.
It was great, and he backed down and he tapped out and did his whole, oh no, I'm not really, I was just kidding, so on and so forth. And his management called to say, hey, just ask Bruce to be kind. And I said, I didn't do anything. It was just our audience that just hammered him unmercifully.
Wow.
So,
So you hadn't mentioned it yet?
I sent out one tweet saying there's only one Brother Love, and that's me. I'm the original, and I've known him since 1993, and he pretended like he didn't know who I was. I'm going, come on, man. We've hung out and had drinks. So, he tapped out pretty quick.
Wow.
So great.
That was pretty neat.
It's a great victory. That's
It was.
That's a great victory.
It really is, because if there was another roast, if Diddy woke up one day, he's like, I'm the roast master general. I don't know
Yeah.
if my fans would back me up like that.
I would, by the
I think
way.
they'd be like, Jeff.